Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to another episode of How You're Getting Effed. I'm your host, Corky Lumpur, and today we'll be talking about layoffs. Specifically, we're going to talk about why companies choose certain countries more often than not over others to conduct their layoffs. 2 days ago, Dyson, the famous vacuum cleaner company, announced surprise layoffs in Singapore, leaving employees in shock and low in morale. The retrenchment exercise on Tuesday was conducted very discreetly with employees unsure of how many were laid off. And then yesterday we get this other headline, which is Samsung to axe thousands of jobs amid AI struggles. Samsung Electronics is planning layoffs across its global operations in Southeast Asia, Australia, and New Zealand, which could affect up to 10% of the company's workforce in these markets. And by Southeast Asia, one of the places where they have a lot of employees is in Singapore, and Singapore, needless to say, is affected as well. This is going to be a two-part video. In this video, I'll be talking about the employee rights of Samsung in their home country of South Korea, and in the second half of this video, which I'll post hopefully over the weekend, I'll be talking about how it is in Singapore in comparison. Quick disclaimer before we begin. I am not a legal advisor. This video is not legal advice. If you do want legal advice, you should be consulting your attorney in whichever country that you live in and get advice from them instead. I'm going to go over how heavily employees are protected in certain countries, which do have a lot of regulations to protect employees and actually enforce those regulations in order to prevent companies from treating employees in an unfair way. And one of those countries is going to be Germany. Why Germany? Because I've lived and worked in Germany before. I've sued two different companies in Germany for unlawful terminations and won both times. For the first time, I actually dragged them through the entire legal motion all the way to court multiple times. And the second company, I sued them and they settle out of court with a favorable outcome for myself. And I'm going to use this as a basis for how things are in South Korea. I have a friend in South Korea who worked in another big tech company, and last year they attempted to conduct a large-scale layoff exercise in South Korea, and she was asking me for advice, so I got to know how it works in South Korea, and I saw many similarities between how things work in Germany in terms of protecting employees and make sure that they don't get screwed over versus how South Korea protects their employees from getting screwed over by all these companies. I'm not an expert at South Korean employment law, and to be honest with you, I don't really have a lot of time in my day. I'm a very busy person and I don't make YouTube videos as a full-time job. So I'm gonna go with what my Korean friend told me and talk about my experience dealing with the German side of things, because that is a side that I'm actually familiar with. I literally spent dozens to hundreds of hours in the past looking up how things work in terms of employee protection and things like that in Germany. And again, there's a lot of similarities between how the employment laws work in Germany versus how they work in South Korea. So you can kind of get an idea based off of this how well employees in South Korea are protected and why companies don't want to fuck with them. So in Germany, they have what they call the Kündigungsschutz, which it literally translates into dismissal protection, which applies for all the employees, whether they're blue-collar employees or white collar. The basis of this law is that companies just can't fire employees for any reason that they want to make up, whether that's a valid reason or an invalid reason. They have to go through a proper due process in order to let go of employees. So if a company is planning to restructure, they're supposed to reassign the employees whose jobs have been eliminated into other roles within the company. They must reassign employees into other internal roles, whether those roles are currently open and are existing, or attempt to make new roles for those employees who are now redundant in order to literally reorganize them into a different part of the company. The reason why that is because the laws in Germany are written to actually protect the employees and give them a sense of job security, which translates into income security, which translates to being able to provide food, shelter, and other things for themselves and also the family that lives with them. That means that companies are prevented from using a Thanos snap just to let go of a whole bunch of employees like they classically do in the United States and in Singapore. So what if a company isn't undergoing reorganization because someone in the C-suite or on the investor board felt like doing it? What if they're actually running into financial problems and they have to let people go in order to make sure that they stay afloat financially and don't go bankrupt? This situation is also covered within the law in Germany, where companies aren't supposed to let people go anyway, regardless of the financial situation of the company. That is a valid reason to let people go, but there must be protocol that's followed by those companies in order to eventually let those people go. The best way a company can do that is provide notice to those employees that they are undergoing some financial trouble and they're having trouble maintaining that payroll. They can't give employees a heads heads up to start looking for new jobs and give them a subtle nudge to leave the company. But as long as the employee decides that they're not going to leave the company, there is almost no way that the company is able to get rid of them except if they offer them money. That is the thing with Germany. Companies aren't allowed to let go of employees for just any reason that they want to make up, but they are allowed to eventually kick those employees out as long as they give them a proper compensation. The compensation amount is very important because that determines the difference between the employee lawyering up and suing those companies, which is something like folks like me did in the past, versus the employee gladly accepting, signing that letter for that severance package and walking away peacefully. That is the main difference. These employees might be forced out eventually, but they are offered a large severance package which can range into months or even years of salary. This comes in addition to Arbeitslosengeld, which is unemployment money that the German government pays you for up to 12 or 24 months, depending on your situation, in addition to the severance package that you get from the company. So the company is giving you plenty of financial incentive to walk away peacefully from your job, should you choose to, with your bags of money and not make a shitstorm on social media and start complaining to the news media about how you were locked out of your company system one morning and you had to check your personal email and you saw that notice from the company saying that you were now terminated and you weren't able to log into any system ever again from that point onwards, much like they did in many companies in Singapore last year and the many years that preceded that. There's also a prioritization system in Germany according to their law in terms of which employees have to be let go first compared to some other protected classes of employees. The first level of the system is a first in, last out system where the people who were hired into the company first should be the ones who are let go last if the company has no other resort but to start laying people off. The second thing is that they're going to start looking at your age, they're going to start looking at your familial status, whether you're single, you're married, whether you have kids, whether you're pregnant, and all those factors come into play when it comes to deciding the culling order of employees and where you stand in terms of who's going to get laid off first. Now in South Korea, my friend tells me that they have more or less the same system in place. There might be differences in the finer details, but that is pretty much how it works in South Korea as well. And how companies typically let people go in South Korea is very similar to how I described that whole companies giving you a financial incentive for you to walk away peacefully with your bags of money from that job, from that company, and not sue them and bring them to court. The way this other big tech company in South Korea handled this in my friend's situation, and by the way, they're an American company which had an office in South Korea, so they're not natively South Korean, but they probably consulted their local lawyers over there as to how things work. The way that the company tried to get rid of employees over there is they made a large-scale announcement that they are attempting to cut heads and cut costs, and they are offering a reward, a bounty for you to leave for whoever wants to leave. So this offer was extended across the entire organization. So it wasn't just my friend who was targeted as a layoff. She received that email as part of the standard protocol of them sending out that email to every single person in order to give everyone a fair chance to take that money and leave the company. The way that the compensation was offered there was they were offering a base amount of 5 months pay. And on top of that, 2 months for every year that you had worked there. So if you were an employee who just joined a year ago, you would get 5 months plus 2 months of pay for that year that you have been working there. 7 months in total. For my friend who had been working there for over 5 years, she was offered 15 months of pay to leave the company voluntarily. That's 5 years she had been working there, so 5 times 2 months equals 10 months of pay plus the base severance of 5 months. 15 months in total. Now take that and compare it to how it works in the United States as well as Singapore, which both are actually very similar in terms of how they protect their employees. You can get kicked out the door at any time for any reason and they can pay you almost nothing. I'm not sure how those companies like Dyson or Samsung are going to pay those employees in those affected areas like Southeast Asia, Australia, or New Zealand, and I don't know if we'll ever see those amounts released publicly, but I can say with a almost 99% certainty that those amounts that they're going to offer those employees are going to be far less than what they would have to offer if they had conducted that same retrenchment exercise in a country like Germany or even South Korea. And on top of all of that, they are just doing it because they're nice, because they are large companies and they don't want to ruin their reputation by screwing over their employees, especially as a multinational company. There are plenty of smaller businesses who are able to get away with just a couple of months' salary average as severance for most of their employees because the law allows them to get away with that. That's it for the first half of this two-part series of how employees are protected across different countries. In the next video, I'll be talking over my personal experience getting laid off in Singapore and how I consulted a lawyer, the kinds of advice that this lawyer gave me, and just how little employees are protected in a country like Singapore. That's it for today, and I hope you learned something. See y'all in the next video. Goodbye.